The world is divided into four spheres, each sphere divided among continents and nations. Nations are divided by borders and interests. These interests divide the news. We examine the impact of these divisions on people and power. This is Imaginary Minds. Welcome to the program. I'm your host, Chris Spanos. Coming up on the show, Wednesday, February 11th marks the 3-year anniversary since Egypt's popular uprising forced then-dictator Hosni Mubarak to step down. I'll speak with Professor Gilbert Achcar about the current state of the country. But first, a look at how English media have reported on Latin America. The corporate media were suspiciously silent on the critically important third summit of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, known as CELAC. The summit was held January 28th and 29th. In fact, the only coverage came from Telesur and a handful of small local outlets. Yet the Davos Economic Forum, held days just before the CELAC summit, received widespread coverage. This imbalance of coverage helps illustrate who the corporate media serve. CELAC was created in opposition to the US-dominated Organization of American States. It includes all the countries of the Americas and the Caribbean, with the notable exceptions of Canada and the United States. CELAC exists to promote regional integration and unity, prioritizing the eradication of poverty and inequality. In contrast, the World Economic Forum is a body defined by its neoliberal character. Members pay lip service to the needs of the majority while crafting policies that feed the coffers of the global aristocracy. This is why the corporate media frames the discussion as it does. Ideas that serve elite interests are heavily covered, while initiatives that challenge hegemony are intentionally ignored. February 11th marks the 3-year anniversary since Egypt's popular uprising forced then-dictator Hosni Mubarak to step down from power. Courts have recently dropped charges of embezzlement and murder against Mubarak, and the current Abdel Fattah el-Sisi regime has issued a mass death sentence to 183 alleged Muslim Brotherhood supporters. Gilbert Achcar is professor at the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. He is author of the book The People Want, a radical exploration of the Arab uprising. He joins me to discuss the current state of Egypt. Hello, Gilbert. Welcome to Imaginary Lines.
Hello, Chris.
Charges of embezzlement and murder have been dropped against former dictator Hosni Mubarak. If this were a measuring stick, how would you measure the progress and direction of the Egyptian uprising 3 years on?
All such charges could be applied in the same manner, if not more, to the president of Egypt, who was a member of the military leadership in charge of military intelligence and very much part of the whole regime. What we have now in Egypt is, by any standard, is the return of the old regime, and I should say also the return of the old regime with a vengeance.
Gilbert, what can you tell me about your impressions of the Egyptian state at this moment?
What can we say about the Egyptian state? Well, the first thing that should be said is that what now people call in the region, using an expression borrowed from Turkey, the deep state. The deep state has never been really changed in Egypt. What happened in January, February 2011 was just removing the tip of the iceberg, if you want. Removing the head of the state, his immediate entourage. But the bulk of the regime, and especially what constitutes the backbone of the Egyptian state, which is this military control of the state, the special role of the army. All this was not really changed. mean, the central slogan of the mass uprising, which was that people want to overthrow the regime, was not really fully accomplished, if you want.
How has the repression of the current Abdel Fattah el-Sisi regime affected social movements in the country, and what might it mean for their future?
Well, those repressive conditions that I just mentioned are also conditions imposed on labor struggle. And there has been a clear repressive turn against various forms of labor struggle that has been unfolding in Egypt. The key point in all that remains the economic issue, the social issue. The real reason behind the regional uprising was the economic blockage that this part of the world has been going through for several decades, and which has produced massive unemployment, world record rates of unemployment. And as long as these conditions, the social conditions, prevail, there is no way that you could achieve any long-term stability in the region. The discontent is growing, and one can sense that there is further revolt simmering in Egypt, and sooner or later this country will go into further phases of this long-term revolutionary process that started in the year 2011.
Thank you for joining me, Gilbert, on Imaginary Lines.
Yeah, you're most welcome, Chris. Thank you.
Also in Egypt, courts have finally freed Al Jazeera journalist Peter Greste to return to his native Australia. Egypt held Greste prisoner for 400 days. Greste's brother Mike told The Guardian that a presidential decree has been issued to deport him to continue his punishment period in Australia. Two Al Jazeera colleagues, Canadian-Egyptian Mohamed Fahmy and Egyptian national Bahar Mohammed, were arrested alongside Greste in 2013. They still remain in prison, and there is no official word about their release, although a month ago a court ordered a retrial. The three were detained after the overthrow of President Mohamed Morsi, allegedly for spreading false news to help a terrorist group in reference to the Muslim Brotherhood. Current Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has since outlawed the Brotherhood, delivering a mass death sentence to 183 alleged supporters. Greste and his colleagues say they were simply reporting the news. Meanwhile, at least 15 other journalists remain in prison. That's it for today's Imaginary Lines. Thanks for watching the show. I'm your host, Chris Spanos. Please join me next week.